I was planning to retire this year, but with the volatile market, is it better just to push back my retirement a year?
Yeah, theoretically, when you retire and the market falls apart, like if you retired in October of 2007, by March of 2009, the S&P 500 was down 57%. And, you're still withdrawing money to live off of theoretically, for most people anyway, out of your accounts that you've saved up that are now worth less than they were, and so it makes a bigger impact. If I'm taking out 1,000 a month and the account's way up here, that's a much smaller impact than when the account's way down here, and I'm still
Yeah.
need the 1,000 a month. So basically, what's happening is that withdrawal becomes a bigger percentage of the
Hmm.
account, and it can be harder for it to recover. And so, however, there's a couple of things that I would say. Yeah, we have some volatility, but right now we're just talking. If you're talking now, right, which I'm
Hmm.
assuming you are, uh, where does that lead? Are we going to drop 57%? Are we going to come back? Are we going to go sideways? We don't know, right?
Hmm.
So that's the first thing. You actually don't know if this is a good or bad time to retire.
Yeah, and that's why we always recommend having a plan because in a plan you could check what would happen if you had another 2008 with your
Yep.
investments, and then you could say, hey, it still works. And
Right.
then
Or
also,
it doesn't. Right. I mean, that's the answer right there. I mean, you run your Monte Carlo simulation under what they call bad timing.
mhm,
Assume that you're at the top of the 2008, for example, when you retire. What happens? How did that model out, right? And so, for some people that are on a weak financial footing, it could have a more dramatic impact. For a lot of people, it might not, and
yeah,
still works. So at least test it, and see what would happen going forward. And that's where the planning is so critical. It's amazing to me that not everybody on the planet doesn't have some sort of plan to be able to test out some of these concepts.
yeah. And then one of those things is if you're flexible with your spending, you can have a lot more control with your retirement. You can
Yeah,
retire
right.
slightly earlier if you're willing to be like, hey, market's down, I'm going to reduce how I spend or pull from my assets.
Yeah, and I remember 2008 very clearly, because all of our clients in my household, we all spent less. It was a lot easier to spend less because, a lot of times you're taking out some things that you really like to do.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things that are fixed, like your mortgage payment or, your car payments, if you have them, or whatever fixed costs that you might have, certainly property taxes and those things aren't going to disappear just because the market goes down. So oftentimes when you're compressing your budget, it's the things that you like to do.
Mhm.
And, but everybody's in the same boat. It was a lot easier to deal with, to be
Yeah,
honest. It
there's
just,
certain things you can always just cut
right,
back on.
right,
Like you would just cut back on, let's say, restaurants. You
right,
cut back a little bit here, cut back a little bit there, but
right.
and you can reduce your spending.
Yeah, travel budgets, you can still travel, but maybe you're traveling to cheaper places, or that you still are interested in, and wait until things recover before you start
Yeah,
going
you could
for the
do a
bigger
road trip
things.
instead of an international
Right.
flight.
Yeah. Yeah. Big difference.